How many times have you silenced yourself just to be loved? How many times have you made yourself smaller, hoping they wouldn't leave? You know that feeling, the moment when a thought, a need, or a truth rises in your chest, but before it reaches your lips, you strangle it back down. You force a smile. You nod politely. You tell yourself, it's fine. Don't upset them. Don't make things harder. Don't be too much. And in that tiny moment of surrender, a piece of you slips away. At first, it feels like a compromise. You convince yourself that this is what love requires: sacrifice, patience, silence. You tell yourself that keeping the peace matters more than speaking your truth. That if you bend just a little more, fold yourself just a little smaller, they'll stay. They'll choose you. And so you hide your anger. You bury your dreams. You dismiss your boundaries as if they were mistakes. You trade authenticity for acceptance, and you call it love. But here is the truth. What you re-keeping, ISN to love it, is survival. You're building relationships not on who you are, but on who you pretend to be. You're creating a fragile illusion that only holds as long as you keep disappearing. And every time you do, you train the world to love the mask instead of the person behind it. And the cruel irony is this: even when they stay, even when they say, I love you, deep down you feel hollow, because love never lands on you. It lands on the role you're playing, the watered-down version of yourself you offer just to avoid rejection. That emptiness, that ache you can explain, comes from knowing that the price of being loved was losing yourself. So you keep shrinking. First, it's your voice, then your needs, then your very sense of self. Until one day, you look in the mirror and realize there is nothing left but a faint outline of who you used to be. And this is the brutal truth. If you keep shrinking to be loved, one day you won't even recognize yourself in the mirror. And worse, you'll realize the love you fought so hard to keep was never truly yours at all. Before we dive deeper, if this message already speaks to something inside you, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell. That way, you'll be the very first to know when I release the next video filled with the same raw, honest insights to help you see yourself more clearly and reclaim the life that's truly yours. She was the kind of woman everyone described as easy to love, sweet, agreeable, always smiling. In her relationship, she was the one who never started arguments, who always said, it's fine, don't worry about me. When her boyfriend wanted sushi, she said Yevon when she craved Italian. When he made plans with friends and forgot about her, she told herself not to complain. Don't be dramatic. Don't be needy, don't be too much. At first he adored her. He told people how lucky he was to have a girlfriend who wasn't demanding, who never caused problems, who went with the flow. But as months passed, something changed. He stopped asking what she wanted for dinner. He stopped checking if she was okay with his choices. He didn't need to, she always said yes anyway. And slowly, she began to vanish. She couldn't remember the last time she laughed at her own joke, or wore her favorite color, or admitted when she was tired, hurt, or angry. The girl who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen, who had dreams of traveling the world, who once had fire in her eyes, was gone. What remained was a quiet shadow of herself, always agreeable, always accommodating, always shrinking. Until one day, he left. No big fight, no betrayal. Just a slow drift into someone else's arms. And when it happened, she asked the question that haunted her. How could he leave when I gave him everything? The truth was painful. He didn't fall out of love with her. He simply never got to love her in the first place. He loved the mask she wore, the silence she offered, the version of her that had erased all the edges, all the fire, all the truth. Then there was him, the guy at the office who always said yes. Yes to late-night emails, yes to extra shifts, yes to covering for his boss when no one else wanted to. He told himself that hard work was the way to success, that if he kept proving himself, he'd earn the promotion, the respect, the recognition. At first it seemed to work. His boss praised him for being reliable, for never saying no. His co-workers admired his discipline. Friends called him the dependable one. And every time he felt exhausted, he silenced the part of him that whispered, "You're burning out." He pushed it down and replaced it with, "Keep going, don't complain, don't be weak." But little by little, his passion began to dim. He stopped writing music, something he once loved. His guitar gathered dust in the corner. He stopped seeing friends on weekends, too tired, too busy. He stopped calling his parents back, telling himself he'd make time next week. And in exchange for all his yeses, he got exactly what he thought he wanted. More responsibility, more tasks, more pressure. Until one night, sitting in his office at 11 p.m., fluorescent lights buzzing above his head, he realized something terrifying. He had become a machine, efficient, obedient, replaceable. He wasn't chasing a dream anymore. He was trapped in a loop. His boss didn't see him as a human being with needs, boundaries, or desires. He was simply the guy who never says no. And that identity came at the cost of the man he once was, the one who loved music, who had dreams, who wanted more than a paycheck and a pat on the back. Two stories, two people. On the surface, they couldn't be more different. A woman who gave too much in love, and a man who gave too much at work. But underneath, they were living the same tragedy. Both of them believed the lie that in order to be loved, chosen, or respected, they had to shrink. They had to erase their edges. They had to silence their needs. And in doing so, they trained the world to take them for granted. The woman's boyfriend stopped seeing her as someone with desires because she erased them. The man's boss stopped seeing him as someone with boundaries because he erased them. What began as an act of love or loyalty became an act of self-erasure. The cruel irony is this: even though they gave everything, every yes, every sacrifice, every compromise, they still ended up empty-handed. She was left alone. He was left burned out. Neither of them found the love or recognition they craved, because love built on silence is not love. And respect built on self-erasure is not respect. And maybe, if you're honest, you've lived a version of their story. Maybe you've smiled through your pain so someone wouldn't leave. Maybe you've worked yourself to exhaustion so someone would notice. Maybe you've told yourself, if I just keep giving, they'll finally love me. They'll finally see me. But here's the devastating truth. The more you shrink, the less of you there is left to love. Why do we shrink ourselves until we're barely recognizable? Why do we silence the voice inside, trade our truth for approval, and convince ourselves that this is what it means to be loved? To understand this cycle, we have to look deeper than everyday behavior. We have to look at the psyche itself. Carl Jung, the Swiss psychiatrist who mapped the human soul with unsettling precision, described something called the persona. The persona is the mask we wear to survive in society, the version of ourselves that wins acceptance, avoids conflict, and earns approval. It's not inherently bad. In fact, we need it. Without a persona, we couldn't function. We couldn't hold a job, navigate relationships, or play the roles life demands of us. But here's the danger: when the mask becomes the whole face. When we forget that the persona is just a role, not the entirety of who we are. Jung warned that the more we identify with this mask, the more we bury everything that doesn't fit into it: our anger, our desire, our pain, our vulnerability. These exiled parts don't disappear. They sink into what Jung called the shadow, and the shadow is patient. It waits, it grows. And the more you silence yourself in the name of being loved, the more the shadow swells in the dark corners of your being. This is why people who are too nice often feel secretly resentful. Why people pleasers explode in sudden outbursts after months of silence. Why the kindest, most agreeable faces sometimes hide the deepest wells of loneliness and rage. Because every yes that betrayed their truth fed the shadow. And the shadow always collects its debt. Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher who saw human nature with ruthless clarity, once wrote, "He who despises himself still respects himself as one who despises." What did he mean? When you constantly shrink yourself, when you erase your desires and silence your truth, you don't escape self-judgment, you create it. You begin to despise yourself for your own cowardice. You may still function, still smile, still keep the peace, but underneath, you know you're betraying yourself. And Nietzsche's point is brutal. Even in that self-hatred, there's a twisted form of respect. Because at least the one despising has power. At least the one who criticizes your silence still has a voice. But you, the one who shrinks, you've given yours away. You've chosen the safety of invisibility over the risk of authenticity. And every time you do, you reinforce the belief that you are not worthy of being fully seen. This is the paradox of shrinking. You do it to be loved, but it only deepens the conviction that you are unlovable. Because if you truly believed you were enough, why would you erase yourself in the first place? Sigmund Freud, the father of psychoanalysis, saw another layer to this tragedy. He called it repetition compulsion, the unconscious drive to recreate old wounds in the present, again and again, until they are finally faced. Think about it. A child grows up in a home where love feels conditional, where affection comes only when they're quiet, obedient, good, where anger, sadness, or independence threatens connection. That child learns a dangerous lesson. To be loved, I must shrink, I must disappear. And though the child grows into an adult, the wound remains. The unconscious keeps replaying the same script, hoping for a different ending. That's why you date people who take you for granted. That's why you stay in jobs that exploit you. That's why you silence yourself, even when it hurts. You not just trying to keep a lover or a boss happy, you unconsciously trying to heal the original wound. You're hoping that if you shrink enough this time, someone will finally notice, finally approve, finally love you without conditions. But here is Freud's cruel observation. The unconscious doesn't heal through avoidance. It heals only when the cycle is broken. And until you face the truth that shrinking was never love, that silence was never safety, you will keep reenacting the same pain over and over, as if driven by an invisible hand. Jung, Nietzsche, Freud, three minds, three languages of the soul. Yet all point to the same conclusion. The act of shrinking may feel like love, but it is self-betrayal. The persona convinces you it's necessary. The shadow grows stronger with each silence. Nietzsche warns of the self-contempt it breeds, and Freud exposes it as the endless repetition of an old childhood script. So when you catch yourself biting your tongue, nodding along, erasing your own needs just to hold on to someone, understand what's really happening. You're not keeping love alive. You're burying yourself alive. And the haunting truth is this: every time you shrink, you're not just losing a piece of yourself in the present. You're carrying forward an ancient wound, feeding a shadow that will only grow darker, and writing a story in which you never get to exist fully. Love that requires you to shrink is not love. Respect that demands your silence is not respect. And peace that comes at the cost of your voice is not peace, it's a prison. It's easy to think that shrinking is just a personal flaw, something unique to you, a weakness of character. But look closer, and you'll see that our entire culture quietly teaches us to erase ourselves. The problem isn't only inside you, it's woven into the air you breathe. Take American culture, for example. From the time you're a child, you're told, be nice. On the surface, it sounds harmless. Who doesn't want to be kind? But underneath, be nice often means, don't make others uncomfortable, don't express anger. Don't be too loud, too honest, too real. Then comes the other phrases that haunt so many lives. Don't be too much. Tone it down, fit in. So you learn early, approval doesn't come from authenticity, it comes from compliance. The good kids are the quiet ones, the agreeable ones, the ones who don't rock the boat. And when those kids grow up, they carry that conditioning into their adult lives. They become adults who smile when they want to scream, who nod when they want to say no, who apologize for taking up space in a world that constantly tells them, less of you is better. Then add social media to the mix. A place that promises connection but thrives on performance. There, shrinking doesn't mean silence, it means curating a self so polished, so perfect that nothing messy or inconvenient ever shows. You filter the photo, edit the caption, delete the post that doesn't get enough likes. You begin to measure your worth not by your truth, but by your metrics. Likes, views, followers. And every time you perform instead of reveal, you step further away from your real self. The irony is painful. In a world designed to connect us, most people feel more unseen than ever. Because we don't actually share ourselves, we share masks. We scroll through endless feeds of people doing the same. And instead of feeling free, we feel trapped in a comparison game that demands even more shrinking. Don't be too real, too vulnerable, too raw, because raw doesn't go viral. Perfect does. And perfect isn't human. The workplace tells the same story in a different language. From the moment you enter, you're taught the unspoken rule. Keep your head down. Don't speak up too much. Don't challenge authority. The employees who are praised aren't always the most creative or authentic. They're the ones who obey, who adapt, who stretch themselves thin without complaint. This culture of silence doesn't just steal your energy, it robs you of your power. Every time you swallow an idea because you fear judgment, every time you work late because you're afraid to say no, you reinforce the system that exploits you. And what's worse, you start to believe the lie that you are powerless. But look around. The most transformative leaders, artists, and voices in history weren't the ones who shrank. They were the ones who dared to take up space. The ones who said what others were afraid to say. The ones who lived in truth, not in compliance. Yet in modern society, shrinking has become the norm. Entire generations are growing up more anxious, more disconnected, more unsure of who they are, not because they're broken, but because they've been conditioned to equate love with silence, validation with performance, and success with obedience. So if you feel like you're losing yourself, know this, it isn't just you. You are living in a culture that rewards masks and punishes authenticity. And unless you see it for what it is, unless you dare to resist it, the world will happily applaud while you erase yourself. There is a brutal reality that most people don't realize until it's too late. The more you shrink, the less others respect you. At first, your compliance seems admirable. Your partner calls you understanding. Your boss calls you dedicated. Your friends call you easygoing. But slowly, the tone shifts. Your silence is no longer seen as kindness. It's interpreted as weakness. Your willingness to bend is no longer gratitude. It's entitlement for others to take more. Human beings are wired to test boundaries. If you never hold yours, people stop valuing them. If you always say yes, people stop asking whether you want to. If you always forgive, people stop apologizing. Without even realizing it, you teach the world how little it needs to consider you. And instead of earning more love, you end up earning less respect. This is the first price of shrinking. You invite disregard. The second price is even heavier. When you constantly silence your truth to maintain connection, you end up living a life that isn't yours. It becomes scripted by other people's desires, other people's needs, other people's expectations. You take the job they want you to take, stay in the relationship they want you to stay in, adopt the opinions they approve of. Outwardly, you're secure. You have the relationship, the paycheck, the approval. But inwardly, you're hollow. Because deep down, you know, the life you're living wasn't chosen. It was assigned. This is why so many people wake up in their 30s, 40s, or 50s with a quiet panic. They look around at the house, the family, the career, and feel an ache that whispers, "This isn't me. This isn't what I wanted. This isn't who I am." But by then, the mask has been worn for so long that the face underneath feels blurred, almost unrecognizable. This is the second price of shrinking. You lose authorship of your own life. And then comes the deepest price of all, the one that no one talks about, until it swallows them whole. Shrinking doesn't just cost you respect or authenticity. It costs you yourself. Piece by piece, you carve away your identity until all that remains is a shell. And inside that shell grows depression, anxiety, resentment, and the quiet despair of someone who has betrayed their own soul. Relationships built on shrinking inevitably become empty. You can't feel loved because love requires being seen and you are not showing yourself. You can't feel safe because safety requires honesty and you are lying every time you say, "I'm fine." Even success feels meaningless because no achievement can fill the void left by your absence. This is why people who have it all on the outside, marriage, career, wealth, still confess to feeling profoundly empty on the inside. It's not because they're ungrateful. It's because they know, deep down, that the self enjoying all of it isn't even real. And that emptiness, if left unchecked, grows into something darker, an existential void. You start asking the questions that terrify you. Who am I really? What do I even want? Have I wasted my life living as someone I'm not? These questions don't go away. They haunt you at night, in moments of silence, in the spaces between distractions. This is the final price of shrinking, the death of the self. Not in a physical sense, but in a spiritual one. You are alive, but you are not living. You are loved, but not for who you are. You are successful, but only in a story that was never yours. And if you continue down this path, there will come a day when you look in the mirror and realize that you've disappeared, not because someone abandoned you, but because you abandoned yourself. Here is the truth most of us are terrified to face. Real love doesn't require you to shrink. Real love doesn't demand silence, obedience, or the erasure of your soul. Real love expands you. It gives you room to breathe, to speak, to grow. It doesn't punish your boundaries, it protects them. It doesn't fear your truth, it celebrates it. If the love you've known required you to fold yourself smaller, it wasn't love. It was dependency, control, or fear disguised as connection. And if the respect you've earned demanded your silence, it wasn't respect. It was exploitation in a mask of approval. The tragedy is that many of us accept these counterfeits because we believe it as all we deserve. But that belief itself is the wound. Carl Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole by integrating every part of yourself, even the ones you've buried in shadow. Individuation isn't about being perfect, polished, or universally liked. It's about daring to show up as a complete human being, flawed, messy, powerful, and real. When you shrink, you block that process. You exile your shadow, deny your needs, betray your truth. And the result is not wholeness, it's fragmentation. So the path forward begins with courage. The courage to say no when your soul aches to speak it. The courage to stand in discomfort rather than dilute yourself for approval. The courage to face your own shadow, the anger you were taught to bury, the needs you were told were too much, the dreams you silenced out of fear they wouldn't be accepted. These parts are not your enemy. They are your path to becoming whole. And yes, it will be terrifying. Speaking your truth may risk rejection. Holding your boundaries may cost you relationships. Choosing authenticity may mean walking away from places where you've been applauded for your silence. But remember this, what you lose by being real was never yours to begin with. If they only loved your mask, their love was never for you. If they only respected your compliance, their respect was never genuine. What you gain, however, is immeasurable. You gain the ability to look in the mirror and recognize yourself. You gain relationships where you don't have to perform to be chosen. You gain a life authored by your own desires instead of scripted by someone else's expectations. You gain freedom, not the absence of rejection or conflict, but the presence of authenticity, where your soul can finally exhale. And perhaps most importantly, you gain self-respect, the kind that cannot be taken away, because it is not based on how others see you, it is rooted in how you see yourself. Nietzsche warned that self-contempt is inevitable when you betray your truth. But the opposite is also true. Deep respect blossoms when you dare to stand as you are. When you stop shrinking, you begin to expand into the fullness of your own being. So here is the call. Stop disappearing. Stop folding yourself into silence. Stop apologizing for existing. The world doesn't need a smaller version of you. It needs the real you, the messy, complicated, radiant you. The you that dares to be whole. And if you're afraid, that's okay. Courage is not the absence of fear, it's choosing to act anyway. Start small. Say no once this week where you would have normally said yes. Speak one truth you usually swallow. Show one piece of yourself that you normally hide. Each act, no matter how small, is a step toward individuation, a step toward reclaiming your life. Because in the end, the greatest tragedy is not rejection by others. The greatest tragedy is rejection of yourself. And the greatest victory is not being loved for who you pretend to be. It's being loved, respected, and alive as who you truly are. So if you're ready to stop shrinking, declare it. Write in the comments, I choose to be whole. Not for me, not for the algorithm, but for yourself. Let it be your first act of defiance against the mask. Your first step toward individuation. Your first whisper of freedom. And remember, real love expands you. Real respect affirms you. Real life begins the moment you stop shrinking and dare to be whole. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next awakening insight we explore together. And I'd love to hear from you. What part of this message hit you the hardest? Leave a comment below with the lesson or truth that spoke to you most. Your words might be the reminder someone else desperately needs to read today.